So, hi everyone, good afternoon. So, I assume you're a little bit tired as we are, so a long day, a lot of input, but please bear with us. I think we have some interesting input for you. So, but before we start, I have a question for you. How would you feel if you have to cross a bridge and you know that it's not statically safe? Would be feel strange, right? So, very dangerous. So in our Western culture, we have structural engineers, and they're mandatory so that they make sure that bridges are statically safe. And good so, I think you agree with me. But the strange thing now is that that's exactly what happens in organizations, metaphorically speaking. So as mathematics are the tools for structural engineers to make bridges statically safe, there's very profound and very solid theory about organizational development. But sadly enough, almost nobody knows about it. So there's really very good theory. So yeah, I think you're going to think now, well, okay, just another guy telling me about theory, abstract things, and you know, I need real practice. I need solutions for my day-to-day problems. But what if that's not true? What if theory is really a key differentiator for you, maybe? So, and there's a very cool quote from Kurt Lewin, and he told us that there's nothing more practical than theory. And there's a big misunderstanding in my world that theory is the opposite of practice, but that's not true, because theory is a tool. And as a tool, the opposite thereof would be something like a silver bullet or recipe, not practice. Theory is like a quality gate for your thoughts. You can challenge your thoughts against theory, and then it validates if you have a good idea or not. And by the way, ideas are the best way to challenge complex problems, and we have more and more of them in our day-to-day lives. So, what we're going to do today is that we want to give you a basic understanding of these key concepts of this theory, and show you how ambiguities, which role they play in organizations. And to tell you all about it today, I brought somebody with me. So that's not you, Martin. Weitsch. I brought Weitsch with me. So, well, of course, Martin, come on.
Oh,
yeah.
Thank you.
Who of you attended Agile Vilnius last year? Okay, that's cool. And maybe some of you attended our talk last year, then you maybe know Weitsch already. But if not, then say hi to him. And you will follow Weitsch today in a just regular day. And he's a manager in the finance industry. And wait, there's something wrong. Weitsch, suit up. Very good. Okay, now it's better. Okay, you will follow him through a day today, his regular working day, and just enjoy.
Yeah, we'll actually start with him being on a training. And let's follow that today and see what happens. And I actually want you to participate also, at least in the first exercise that they do. So find yourself in groups of 2. So if you're sitting alone, try to find someone else to talk to. And you need to assign 2 types of roles to yourself. No, it's okay. It's okay. So you will be one listener and one DJ or musician. So, and the first, no, now you can, it's better now, I take it. So I would like to invite you to the musician. Think about a well-known song, but just think about it. Keep it in your head, and then you can start tapping the song, and the listener guess. Okay? Get going.
And we will rock you is not allowed.
All right. You're free to tell which long song it was now if you want to. So, what happened here? How did it feel like?
I don't know, like I was trying hard to understand, but without any help from the musician, it is difficult.
Yeah, you couldn't envision. But I'm sure that everyone who were trying to convey this information, in your head, you heard the song. It was very clearly there for you. And that's how communication works. Our type of communication is very limited, of course. Okay, I'm limited even more now, but this is how we humans do. We perceive information, and then we calculate and try to understand it based on the input that we get. So that's one learning that Weich did on this workshop. What else did he learn?
Then after this cool check-in, they have another game, and the teachers want them to play a little ball game. And so you can use this. I did that with my teams as well. So you do a little check-in, and you ask the participants to tell their name and a 3-digit number. That's all. Then you make a round. Everybody tells their 3-digit number. And then you're not allowed to talk. Expect you call somebody out, because the rule of the game is that you pass the ball through the room, and in order to do that, you need to talk. You need to say the name and the 3-digit number. And when you prepared it very well, then of course almost nobody remembered the numbers. And what do you think will happen? Yeah. Some of you might remember the numbers. What else would happen? Silence, yeah, very uncomfortable. Yeah. So, that's something that might happen. We usually wanted to play the game with you, but it maybe takes too much time, so it's like a thought experiment now. So what will happen is that some of you might remember the numbers, and you will pass the ball to that person, and of course a pattern will stabilize, and you will always get the same passings. And some of them will have increasing numbers, and some of them won't have any passings at all. And then you can be very mean, and then the manager comes in and say, "Don't be that mean, include all the people in the game, you know." And you're saying, "I cannot do that because I don't know the name and I don't know the number." And what then also happens is that you try to analyze it in big corporations. You know, you have that kind of situation, and then a lot of people are used to that situation, and then it's, okay, why did that happen, and stuff like that. And it doesn't matter, because the pattern is absolutely random. You can play the game 5 times, and you will always get different patterns. So the pattern is random.
Okay. That was the workshop for Weich. So he goes back to his office and thinks and reflects on, what does this mean, really? Maybe it needs to be a mess. Yeah, maybe it needs to. But he thinks, he dreams, he sleeps, he thinks, drinks probably a little bit, I guess. But eventually he comes to a conclusion, okay, this is my understanding of what I need to do. This is what I want to achieve. And we will follow him now as he works with this decision that he has made when he goes back to his team. So please follow us there. But let's make it more interesting. Let's add another dimension, because there's a parallel universe where exactly the same Weich have experienced exactly the same thing, but come to a completely opposite decision of how we want to approach it. So let's meet Weich 2. Need to click here too. So let's see what happens when we go into the different ambiguities that Weich meet in his work. So when Weich comes to his fellow teammates, he says, okay, I have complete trust in you. We have a very hard problem in front of us and we need to approach it. And as time progresses, he feels that, okay, things are not, people are, of course, shipping in, doing a lot of work, helping out, as you can see, but they are also confused. Where's the coordination? How can we support each other? It doesn't really support. And Weich, as a servant leader, steps back and let the organization do what they do because I trust them. But he feels lost. He feels that he's blind, that he's approaching something that he can't really comprehend. Okay, let's meet the other Weich.
Well, meanwhile, in the other universe, Weich came to the conclusion, well, I'm going to call out the dictatorship. I'm going to say what's happening here. I will go into the command and control mode, and he will plan out the entire thing. He will have all the post-its, all the structure ready. He tells his guys, okay, that's what you're going to do. You will do that, you will do that, you will do that. And okay, so very good. People are doing what they're supposed to do. And it's a lot of work, of course, and people feel a little bit frustrated in the other universe. And at some point, he realizes he just is drawn in his work. Everything, everybody, every problem is just piling up on his desk. And all the other Weiches are just wandering around mindlessly, just doing what Weich is telling him. So, guys, what we want to tell you here is that trust and control, as we said here, are two sides of the same coin. And neither of them are very good or very bad, but what are the advantages of trust and the disadvantages?
Yeah, as you can see here, it reduces complexity and deal with open features. But I want to say another thing about trust. You can read it yourself, but I was thinking when we were discussing this, me and David, about team of teams. So probably you've heard about it, and a side effect of trust that you can utilize, because trust is only something that you can put on a person. You can't trust a share, or it's not the same thing. So you trust a person, you don't trust an organization, but it can leak. So I put trust on you because I know who you are and what you do, and you represent this organization. So therefore I trust the organization, but you represent that organization to me. And what they did in Team of Teams was that they had an embedding program. And that embedding program was already present, but they used it in the organization previously to send out the worst guys, the one that they wanted to get rid of, because they wanted the best ones. But they decided to flip it. We send the best ones instead, because we want collaboration. And that made a very big difference.
Yes. So as you can see, so control, trust are the same, two sides of the same coin, as I said. And you reduce complexity, of course, the same way you do when you trust people. Because it's very easy when you say, okay, I just do whatever needs to be done and I don't trust anybody, then it's also very complex and complexity reducing. But the very interesting thing is, on the other hand, you need trust. You need to control trust, otherwise it gets gamed. And you know that. That's why we have speed controls. That's why we have text controls. If you know that you are be trusted blindly, you will game it, I promise you. So that's why you need control in order to have trust in an organization. And on the other hand, of course, it's very expensive and it restricts autonomy. Let's continue. That's the summary, of course, yeah. So trust gets you more trust, control gets you more control. It's a vicious or a good cycle, as ever you want to call it. But trust makes you blind, because you put everything you have in your people, and on the other hand, control makes you weak. So you're screwed both ways. Both are neither right or wrong, but they need to coexist. So it needs to be a mess, obviously.
Yeah. So moving on to the next ambiguity, though. Team is growing. 15 plus people in the team. Of course, Weich have decided he needs to include everyone. Let's connect. Let's work together. Let's take decisions together. What happens? We get a Polish Riksdag. Oh, I don't know what that's called in English. Sorry. The discussions will be forever and ever. There's no way of having good decision making. And the people in the front and in the back, they doesn't even hear what the others are talking about. And the other example here on the left, on your right, is people are talking and others feels excluded because they're not part of the interactions. So what are they deciding really? So we have those negativities.
And on the other hand, you can separate teams. So meanwhile, in the other universe, Weich thinks that might be a good idea to separate the teams. So when we are more than 60 people, or I don't know, then we just, of course, split the teams. Why not? So we have a lot of little cubicles, and the teams are working inside there, and we only have 4 or 5 people or trolls working in these little teams, and it works perfectly. It's just very efficient communication. And then at some point, 2 of them meet in the coffee corner, and oh, I didn't know that you were working on that. Maybe we should talk at some point. That's interesting. And then Weich, of course, he thinks, maybe how do I coordinate all the different teams? And he thinks about hiring more and more managers, because you need some managers to coordinate all the different teams.
Okay, yeah, so connect. If you connect things, you increase complexity, and that's sometimes something that you want to have. And you also increase information density. So it's easier to see and navigate and innovate. But you also are less efficient and less resourceful.
On the other hand, if you separate things, and that's very crucial, it's always a deal you need to make. You can reduce complexity in the team, and you reduce the effort and the efficiency in the team, but you add complexity on a meta level for the organization, because you need to coordinate stuff. So, yeah.
You're screwed either way.
Yeah, you're screwed either way. Yeah. So you have a lot of parallel processes, and as in the first example, it's a link here. Simplifying always means that you are blind to different things. So when you simplify things, you lose a lot. So same here. The more you separate organizational processes, the more you decrease complexity, but you increase complexity on the organizational level. And the more you connect processes, the more complexity you need to handle them. Both are neither wrong or right. You just need them both. It depends really heavily on your context. So obviously, it needs to be a mess.
Next ambiguity. Organizational change.
We love that.
That's nice. So while she has introduced it, they are have challenging problems. Of course, we need to do a change in how we're doing it. What happens? Resistance. He's stupid. We need to keep what we are doing. The things that we have done has worked before. Why change? Or even worse, people just, he will get tired soon. Let him talk. We'll get back to what we have always done. Because they know things. Of course, they feel confident in that.
Meanwhile, in the other universe, Weich decided very same thing. We need a new strategy. We need to reorganize. We need to challenge the problems we are facing, of course. And all the team is, yes, we are on the way. We are doing it. Okay, just let's start right away. They're just cleaning all the whiteboards. They just get rid of all the old stuff. They just put everything in the trash. And we are working. We start right away. And then at some point, Weich is seeing all the trash, and he thinks, oh, goddamn, we lost all of the past. We don't know anything anymore. What's with the past? With all these things we worked out, and they worked perfectly. They're just gone.
Yeah. So if you keep what you have, you stabilize, you make it easier for you to comprehend and work with things. But it's also harder for you to do changes, of course. Yeah, I think it's good enough to go.
Yeah. Yeah, and when you learn things, that always means that you need to unlearn things, of course. That's also the same process. And it's very necessary in order to adapt to change. Well, we all know that, and we are more on this side of the spectrum, I assume, just because of our jobs. Yeah. But of course, it's very time sensitive, because what you learn today is not valid anymore tomorrow, or it isn't valid anymore in a few years. And on the downside, you need to unlearn old things, and that's, of course, threatens the identity. And that's one of the most unseen things in change initiatives. People don't react to negative to change because they don't want arguments for the new. They don't know what they become when the new paradigm is valid. It's a threat of their identity. You need to give them a reason why they're still valid in the new way of working. So the more you change, learn things, the more people hold on to them. And the more you keep them, the more you need to change. You're screwed both ways. Both are neither right or wrong. They need to coexist. Maybe it needs to be a mess.
Maybe. Okay, so we provided you with a few ambiguities here. It's time to reflect. And it's time for Weich to reflect. And we help him to reflect a little bit by introducing a time warp here. So we can actually let them meet each other and talk about their different experiences. It's easier if you have the possibility to reflect on different polarities, of course.
And one of the key points here, I just want to mention, it's maybe a hidden principle here. If you keep that in mind when you leave today, I think it's very good. Assume that the person or the Weich you are talking to knows something you don't. It's more or less active listening, and you know that, but that's a more precise formulation of that. So that's really helpful. When you talk to people, assume that they know something that you don't. And let's see what the two Weiches came to, which conclusion they come.
Yes, they come to this conclusion, that an organization is a communication ecosystem. That is within where everything is happening. That's where we do, and that's this organizational ecosystem is actually there to fulfill some sort of need. Maybe a market need, could be other things, of course, but depends on what you want to achieve. But most of the time it's a market need, in our world at least. The fuel or the power for a communication ecosystem is the decision that is made within that organization. We've seen a few decisions in these ambiguities, but the fuel to those decisions is the perceptions of those decisions. How people perceive that decision, so the change. I perceive it in specific ways. That is what creates the fuel for the next decision. So we need to work and organize ourselves in the tensions that is created in the organization when we introduce decisions.
I mentioned it in the beginning that this is profound theory, and you may know it or you may not know it, but it's system theory. It's from Niklas Luhmann, basically, and he's a German sociologist, I think it's called. And the main idea is that maybe over the past 100 years, you think organizations like machines. You know, that's what we think when we think about organizations. But that's not true. And he gets inspired from biology, and he thinks that organizations are more like a human thing, an ecosystem. You cannot think system without environment. The environment heavily has an influence on the organization and how it adapts. You can make forecasts on which elements you will have an organization depending on the context they're working in. And he says basically that an organization is a communication structure. It consists of organizations. It's maybe I want to add that
go with the flow.
Go with the flow. We have shown you the ball game, and Luhmann explicitly said, and that's maybe strange and not intuitive, that organizations don't consist of people. It's like the game. You need the people to play the game, but the people does not consist of people. That are the rules and the things that make the game happen, you can maybe philosophically say that the game is playing you, not the other way around. And it's the same in organizations. And if you want to change that, you need to change the rules, not the people, because organizations don't consist of people. That's why he said it's a communication structure.
Okay, so here's the first principle. Play with tensions. I mentioned it a bit earlier here, but you need to be able to understand that there are polarities. So it's not project or processes, or project or product. It's both. It's not agile or waterfall. It's both. So we need to be able to work with these polarities and join them so that we can start to use the full spectrum of our possibilities within an organization. That's when we sort of are able to produce more value together. So it's not that we are sitting here in the middle, just doing the things, the gray part in the middle. We can use the full spectrum, both sides, when it's most applicable.
It's a colorful shades of gray.
Exactly,
So.
the colorful shades of gray that we mentioned in the introduction. Prince, you can go.
Okay, so principle 2, it's descriptive self-awareness. That's also a very important point you can take home right away. So when you think that organizations are communication structures and they only consist of communications, then you need to change communications in order to change the system. Makes sense, right? So this sentence, I love it. How to bring an organization to talk to itself about itself. That's all what it's all about. When we want to change organizations, we should help them to be able to bring them to talk to itself about itself. And then you can change the system.
Yeah, and there's some strategies that I use for that. Maybe you've heard about it, liberating structures. It's a very good way to scale discussions so that you can find actions and ideas and understandings of how to progress.
And principle 3. Do not ask what's right, but what do you decide? So the main point I think we want to make here today, and I said it in the beginning, that you can make things more simple, but you lose a lot. And I think we should recognize that organizations are very complex and that we lose a lot when we try to make it simple. So don't assume that it's simple. That's why we talk about ambiguities. And it's not wrong and it's all right. It's just what do you decide and what consequences will you have? Because in a complex system, you will always have unintended consequences. And you know that from your life. So just ask, okay, when I do this, who will suffer the consequences? Because at some point, someone will. And what we brought with us today are 3 different ambiguities in these 3 different areas here. So usually when we talk about change, you have the social dimension or you have the subject dimension, but what's most neglected is the time dimension. And you can see it in the climate change stuff, for example. There were made decisions and people need to suffer the consequences in another time. Yeah, that's very easy, you can do that, but you have the same in organizations. So ask who, what, or when will have the consequences. And you can map that out. That's, of course, just we brought you 3 ambiguities. There are a lot more. You can read them. We have it in our sources back in the presentation. Just write them down. And when you work with the leadership teams or in your teams, you can ask the questions. Okay, in which dimension will we think we will have consequences? And what do we do? Do we have mitigating structures and strategies at place? And to close, before we have questions, without order, nothing can exist. Without chaos, nothing can evolve. Nowadays, people know the price of everything and the value of nothing. I think that wraps up the things we want to convey here very precisely. It's a quote from Oscar Wilde, and I like it very much. So, thank you very much for listening, and at these late hours today, now we have time for some questions.
Do we have some questions?
Sure you have.
Yeah. First of all, thank you so much. That was visually incredibly brilliant, and the storytelling.
That's Martin.
It's amazing.
All him.
I'm speechless. I could stop making pictures. But the question is, yes, it's very inspiring in a way, like embracing chaos, because as a manager, as a leader, you always feel that pressure because there are no right choices. You're always on a different scale of things. And knowing that you will screw up anyway gives a bit of a safe space here. Are there any practical advice on how to be better in embracing the chaos? Well, awareness, probably.
Awareness
yes.
for many, I think, is good, but also navigating slowly in shorter iterations, not doing a big plan. I think that's normally so. Navigating in the tension and seeing and organizing and helping the team to, or the teams to better navigate by themselves. So supporting the tension navigation, I think, is an important part.
Oh. And that's why I think I said that theory can make a difference here, because when you know things, you can make other and more informed decisions. And there's a very other good quote, I think, from James Priest, I assume. He said that most people suffer the consequences of their decisions of the past. That's true, of course. But you can maybe mitigate these kind of consequences when you try to make better decisions, and you can do that because you have more distinctions at hand. For example, what I always do with my teams is that we do the differentiation between complicated and complex. And that's maybe one other ambiguity. You will always have both in organizations. You have complicated stuff and you have complex stuff, but you have very different strategies to deal with them. Make it obvious. I have workshops with my teams, and we can just talk about the task we are doing, and we can categorize them and think, okay, what part of this task is complex, what is complicated, and then we have different strategies at place to handle them. So then you can at least know that there will be consequences, but I have the right strategies for the different things I have to deal with anyway.
Thank you so much. That gives even more thoughts to think about. No, but it's the answer.
Do we have another question?
Perfect.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for presentation. My colleague told that if I ask something, I will get the gift.
Ah.
There was a statement that organizations have to speak about themselves, something, right? Did I understand it correctly? Isn't it kind of narcissism? Because if we make change, I think it's important for customers, subcontractors, whatever outside, but not just for me. Like, did I do it good? Or it's something deeper about that. I feel there's some narcissism that, or what is the...
Yeah, that one.
Yeah. Is it really the reason? Or what is the reason behind that?
The thing is, that's why we have the picture here. So the idea is, if organizations don't consist of people, but of communication, then you can use the perception of the people in order to talk about the organization. And the organization is this kind of globe here in the middle. You can be the spectator and watch what the organization is doing. It's like an own entity with its own personality, ambiguities, things what's happening. And if you improve the organization, then you need to talk about it. So of course the people are part of the organization, so that's why they are in it, but they need to talk about it in order to improve it and to change it. And of course the reason why an organization exists is to satisfy market needs. And when you want to make it better, then you need to talk about how the organization behaves. That's the idea.
Yeah, the way that people are talking about an organization, regardless if we hear it or not, is the mirror of how that organization is perceived by the people within the organization. So if we are able to mirror that and visualize that to others within the organization, it's much easier to change it.
And you can say that, and you can see that all day long in organizations, because just because I have something in my mind, an idea, it's not part of the communication, a loud communication in the organization. You can talk to your neighbor in the coffee kitchen that your boss is an entire asshole. but you won't say it in a meeting. You know, that's the difference. It's not part of the official formal communication in the organization, although you have it in your mind and you say it in the organization to somebody else. That's the difference. And if you want to change the organization, you need to change the communication. And you can only change the things if these kind of ideas really come into the regular daily communication systems. I don't know, everybody of you knows that you go in a meeting and you decide on something and then you go out and nothing changes, nothing. Everybody knows, everybody talked about it, but nothing changes because the structure and the rules of the game didn't change. Yeah, that's the reason.
I saw one more hand here. So while I'm going, please scan the feedback form.
Thank you for the presentation. I have a question. Maybe you mentioned earlier that organization is not composed, it's not about people, it's about the game, right? But then you also emphasized one example when you said that in order to relieve the sub-teams, we bring more managers and more pain is being added to the organizational. So we need these people. So how at the end the organization, it's not the people, but it's the game. How can a game be played without the people? Because to me, I've been putting some thoughts on this last quotes, and it's quite interesting, but I can't fully agree on that.
But you said it already. You can't play the game without the people.
Okay.
But the game is not
the people.
The people.
Okay,
so
the organization is not the people, so it's
yes,
the game.
Yeah. So when you go out and you buy a game, and my family and I we love to play games, then I go in the grocery store and I just buy a game, and then I can watch into that, and I have the rules and all these things, but I don't find people in there. You don't buy people when you buy a game.
Sure.
But the game can only be played when the people are there.
Okay.
So, and you show very different behavior when you play the game, and your behavior is very different when you play different games. Yeah. So behavior is context and personality. And our argument is that context is key. Of course, personality is also important,
sure,
but you have way more leverage when you change the rules of the game. Yeah.
Thank you.
And you can adopt in seconds. You know that you can play football, and the next minute you can play another game. You just adopt to the rules and you show very, very, very different behavior. It's easy. Yeah.
More questions? So we have from Buva one. Please share tips how to support individual in navigating the ambiguity and welcoming the unexpected changes.
The unexpected changes, how to welcome them.
Yeah.
Do you have an idea?
No. So you need to navigate complexity, and you need to acknowledge to yourself that there are unknowns, like Martin were talking about in the keynote start, but there are also unknown unknowns. Something that you can't even comprehend that will happen.
Maybe I have one. There's another distinction. It's not a polarity, but it's another distinction which I think it's very helpful. It's a distinction between person and role. And organizations always work with roles. So when you have a problem in an organization and you get, I don't know, problems, and you have conflict with other people in the organization, it's not about you. It's about the role. Because the role is somehow the rule. You know, you need to behave like this and that. That's what you apply for when you look for a new role in an organization, and that's how you need to. That's what the organization expects from you, how you play the game. But of course, if you write it down, it's not everything you can have. It's not enough because it's complex. You cannot write down everything you need to do, and therefore you have conflict all the time. So maybe to embrace the change, it helps me a lot if I can make the differentiation between it's not me, it's my role. So then I'd be very more relaxed because I just embrace the conflict because I think, okay, that's cool. Conflict is progress. So it's just my role, and I know that there will be conflicts, and then I can deal with that. It had nothing to do with me. You know, or at least I can separate, because of course it makes a difference if I do it or Martin does it, but I hope you know what I mean.